Welcome to the Authentic Change Podcast. I'm Mike Horn, your host, and this podcast is for leaders and coaches who need and want fresh perspectives on what it means to live and to lead authentically. You're a leader who wants to make a difference, but sometimes you feel stuck. You know there's more to life and to leadership than what you're currently experiencing. It can be tough to figure out how to grow as a leader. You might be reading all the blogs and books, but it still feels like you're not making progress. You might even be feeling like you're doing everything wrong. On Authentic Change with Mike Horn, we interview experts who share their insights on how to live and lead authentically. Our guests are trendsetters in building great leaders, teams, and organizations. We provide fresh perspectives on what it means to live with purpose and authenticity. Welcome to this episode of the Authentic Change Podcast.
Welcome to this episode of Authentic Change with Mike Horn. I'm absolutely delighted to have in the studio today, in our virtual studio, Susan Collins. And Susan and I share something, and that is we've both led talent acquisition teams and talent acquisitions departments. So I'm very curious to hear about Susan Collins' experience in those roles. And as Susan describes her own role, she really had a front seat to watching careers rise and fall. And she was always curious about why some talent thrived and other incredibly talented souls never realized their potential within an organization. So she took all of that experience that Susan brings from the corporate world or the corporate arena, guiding people through career decisions, and works as a career growth coach now, focused on helping leaders create meaningful goals, find their way to successful career paths, and work with no regret. Susan's a person who takes an innovative approach to help those she works, assisting them with developing personal talent strategies they can use to take control of their own career journey. So, Susan, it's just a delight to be in the studio with you today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. You know, I had that front row seat for years. I sat in talent acquisition. I counseled people through accepting jobs, leaving jobs, all of that fun stuff. And a couple of years ago, I was sitting in a room with a bunch of female executives. We were part of an organization, so none of us worked together, but it was a networking organization. And I started to hear regret. And for me, it was sad because I always had loved my job. I loved what I did. I loved, coming up through the ranks of an organization and helping people make just huge transformations in their careers. And so I'm just starting my third year. 2 years ago, I left my corporate job and started helping people figure out what was important to them when it came to careers. On a personal note, I sit in Sugar Land, Texas. I am a mom of 2 almost grown men. How sad is that? That happened so quickly. And I've got a bonus daughter. So life is good. And I work at a rescue part-time. So I love dogs and have been married for longer than I want to say out loud.
And Susan, as you think about how you're helping people with their career growth, certainly you're uniquely qualified to do that given your background and experience, but what is it that you look for in taking on clients?
For me, it is about somebody who knows that there's more out there, but they're not really sure what it is. So either they've hit a bump in the road at work, or they were passed up for a promotion, or they were too afraid to go for the promotion. They saw a job that they were interested in and they weren't ready. So I talk a lot about getting ready and staying ready. I've got an entire team that I work with that helps you kind of get that mindset going for movement forward and actually taking the action. I think a lot of times we don't do it because we're afraid, or we think my resume is not right. I haven't interviewed in a long time, but there are steps that you can take to get ready.
What are some of those steps that people take to get ready? How does one go about doing that?
It's first a little bit of soul searching, figuring out why you paused when you saw that job, what things happen. are happening within the organization that you might be interested in. We are taught that our careers need to go up the ladder. So we see a job and we look at the next natural job, or we've got a boss pushing us in a direction. And sometimes it's just about listening to what's going on and understanding that lateral can be just as impactful as up or forward.
And how does somebody stay ready then? I mean, stay ready is that a constant, always on job search then? Or how do you think about that?
I like to think about a 9-year career. So back in the day when everything was a clear path forward, we used to say, when I grow up, I want to be this. And it's kind of silly to think about now, when we were 18, 19, 20 in college and they were talking about pick your path, go down the path, but there's so many more jobs than there used to be. And so staying ready is about taking quarterly stock of what have I learned this quarter, or what do I like to do? Where's my success been? What have I learned about myself during this quarter? And then starting to look at what other people are doing around you. Is there something that somebody's doing that I think I could do? Is there something that somebody's doing that I know that I don't want to do, right? Like, is the path that my boss is telling me that is next, in all actuality, right for me?
And to your point, I mean, that makes soul searching or some understanding of your values, what drives you, your motivators, so important that you do in the getting ready phase to stay in the stay ready phase.
Yes, 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 yes. When I work with clients, I bring in a whole group of people. So I bring in a resume writer. You may not think that you want to change your job right now, but how many times have you said, oh my goodness, there was that interesting job. I wanted to apply for it, but they needed a resume. It's about checking your LinkedIn and making quarterly updates to your LinkedIn, making sure that you've got an accurate view of what you're doing and what you're giving back to the world. I also have a 2-hour intensive with an interview coach that's part of the package. So if you haven't interviewed in a long time, if you've worked your way up the ladder internally and it's just kind of been given to you, you've been tapped on the shoulder, when you start to thinking about taking a path sideways or a path with another organization, even moving into a different department where they don't know you as well, if you haven't built or kept those interview skills up to date, that first interview can be a little bumpy. So we do a lot of interviewing intensives. And then my third piece is a social media strategist on top of the coaching that goes on with it.
And why is social media strategy? What's so important about that today?
As much as people hate it, as much as they don't want to believe that LinkedIn is part of their strategy for moving forward, what they don't know is that in talent acquisition, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on these recruiter seats that LinkedIn sells. And so what happens in an organization is they say, we need a new VP of planning. They go back to the hiring manager. They go through the job description. They make sure that the job description is right. They send it to compensation. Compensation says, based off of what I see here, this is the salary that we want to offer. This is what is competitive with the market. And this is what keeps us equitably fair internally. They post the job. The job goes out to LinkedIn and some other job aggregators after it goes on their career site. And then your recruiting team, they go out to LinkedIn and they start looking. So you need to have a presence on LinkedIn that talks about what you're doing, that sets you apart from your competition and helps you stay ahead of the game, whether it's building your credibility internally or externally. You need to really think about your personal brand.
And what about the job search engines such as Indeed or Glassdoor? I mean, how do they fit into all of this?
I love Glassdoor. I say it's where the bidders go first. So it's about looking for trends on Glassdoor. But I think that you've got to kind of take a look at the big picture landscape and determine what are the trends that I'm seeing. So after you have your resume updated and you start to look around, you should, number one, like organizations on LinkedIn or follow organizations on LinkedIn that you're interested in, because it makes you rank higher when somebody does a search on LinkedIn. Number two, you should go to Glassdoor, and they've got interview examples there. So you might be able to find some information about how the organization conducts interviews, what kind of questions they ask. But you also can tell a lot about the culture, how people feel about the CEO, and then the other job aggregators that are out there. Indeed, a lot of places will scrape those jobs out to their world too. And so you've got to kind of look around and see what's out there for everything. The best thing to do is really just to set up job search alerts. So if something comes up, they'll actually alert you to a job that you might be interested in.
Oh, that's great. Now, you've got a wonderful website called the networkconcierge.com. And you'll find a lot more about Susan Collins at the networkconcierge.com. And Susan, as you put that together, what led you to call it the Network Concierge?
You're sitting in corporate America and you're dreaming and you're trying to think about what you want to do. I knew that I was going to go into coaching. I'd had the same coach for a few years and we had worked through kind of all of my corporate dreams. And as I started to think about how I could help people, it really boils down to your network, whether it's your neural network or your professional network and even your personal network. Those are all really important when it comes together to building your career. And it was one of those late night sessions that it came together and it's kind of worked out for me. I've always been known for networking. In my past life, I partnered with a competitor and we put together a networking group that's got over 20,000 followers still to this day. And so networking just seemed like the logical name for me because that's kind of what I've always been known for.
Many of my clients, executives who are often come to coaching because they're in some sort of transition point. Maybe they're not as interested in what once interested them. Maybe there are some behaviors that other people aren't liking anymore. Maybe they've moved on from the role of, where their skills were natural. And maybe the organization's grown in size or it's downsized or something doesn't fit anymore. I find that most of these executives are without networks, despite what many people would think, particularly those who have 10, 15-year careers, 20-year careers inside one organization where they, plotted their technical expertise. They were given positions of increasing responsibility. And here they are at 40 or 45 or whatever the number is. And sometimes it's not about a number, it's about a situation or events. And they have no network, to think of. Do you ever encounter that?
All of the time. It's almost that piece where just as you really need your network, right? Your career is starting to climb. You stop. People give up on their networks before they really need it. And it's difficult, right? Because when we're younger in our careers, we're told you need to network, you need to network, you need to network. And we don't feel that immediate return on investment. So unless you have that really strong belief or early on in your career, you've had a few wins along the way where you feel like you understand how to leverage that network, no matter how small it is. I find all of the time that my clients have this almost embarrassment that they have to go back to their network that they haven't built. And we have a lot of conversations around how to go back to a network that you've kind of abandoned and kind of revive it and start to build on it. I'm in the process of building, I think I've got about 40 of them done, just those really small snippets that you put into a LinkedIn invite for every situation. You need to go back and say, I know it's been a long time since we connected. You popped up on my LinkedIn profile. I wanted to reconnect, but you have to put effort into your network. And even if you feel like it's too late in the moment, it's really never too late to start building your network again.
Oh, that's such great sage advice. What, you made one suggestion about how people might do that. Sorry, we haven't been in touch for a long time. Saw you in my LinkedIn feed. Other suggestions or comments or ideas or thoughts on that?
Telephone. Pick up the phone. it is a little bit of conversation that you have to have in your head. I know that I'm going to have a conversation and it's going to feel a little awkward in the beginning because we haven't talked in a long time, but I'm going to give myself that moment of uncomfort and I'm going to pick up the phone or I'm going to reach out to Bill and ask Bill to send me the phone number to Janet because I know Bill's still in touch with Janet and I'm going to pick up the phone and say, hey, I need a favor. About 30 minutes before we started recording today, I got a text from somebody that I talk to 2 or 3 times a year. And she said, I've just found out that I'm getting laid off. I was hoping that when I make the announcement later, you could stand behind me on LinkedIn and give me a little push. And I'm going to do that. People forget that I believe 98% of the world wants to help. That it's just innately in us as human beings to want to help. And I do know that we tell ourselves these stories that I haven't talked to them in a long time and they're not going to want to help me or I should have been better. But we all do the best that we can. And if we can start today and give ourselves a little grace that it may be uncomfortable, the more you do it, the better you get at it. I'm actually working with a client right now who resisted the networking piece. He came to me because he wanted to change jobs and he resisted it. And the other day he got a fabulous lead that looks like it's going somewhere. And, he kind of jabbed me and said, see, I told you networking worked.
Now, with all this great candidate preparation, preparing people to network, dusting off their resumes, interviewing skills, a complete array of services which are offered, sometimes potential employers don't treat people back that well. There's never a response. I would imagine you would suggest that is sort of not a great job search strategy anyway, to do a lot of blind postings. But what are your thoughts on that?
Sad, because talent acquisition used to be an art. It was really about teaching people how to converse and build relationships and have, a short list of people you would call if something were to come open. Technology has changed things. Recruiters, unfortunately, a lot of times we see are the first ones to be laid off. And so they may be managing 20, 30, 40 requisitions. For each requisition, they've got a hiring manager that wants something a little different. Of course, they want a unicorn. Unicorn is at the top of the list. Find somebody that can handle these 6 tech stacks and has managed teams of 100, whatever the case may be. So it is about staying in front of the recruiter and making sure that you're asking questions such as, I felt like this was a great conversation. Can you tell me what next steps are? And when should I expect to hear back from you? Because if they say you can hear back from me by Thursday, then on Friday, you shouldn't feel any guilt just reaching out to them and saying, I know life gets busy. I know we talked about reconnecting on Thursday. I understand we're headed into the weekend, but I was wondering if you had any information.
Now, are you also doing retained search, or how does that, fit into? Someone with your background and your experience, and you're really focused on the career development, career growth, and from the buyer's perspective, or the seller, however you think about that, from the candidate perspective.
You remember when you used to lead talent acquisition and you'd be talking to a candidate and they just you knew they were a great candidate, but they didn't have either the confidence to go into the conversation, or they weren't ready, or a lot of times they weren't really even sure they wanted the job. I have really just gone full circle and poured my heart, love, and attention into the individual. It was fun to build strategies and help organizations attract people, but I saw so many people on the other side that just either had regrets or weren't sure about what they wanted to do, or didn't know how to show up ready for the job. That now I just work on the client coaching side, helping people figure out what's next and getting ready and staying ready.
I encourage my clients who are in job search mode to generate as much no as possible, generate as many no's as possible. That job search is a geometric progression. You want to eliminate the number of no's so that you can find a yes. And I often advise clients that of all the things that fall apart in life, jobs are one thing that for most people can recover. May take longer than you want. It may not pay as much as you want. It may not have the same title, but given an effort of focus and dedication, that things in the job world can recover. Now, given all the layoffs of too many people, particularly in tech, you're affected by that and you're a part of the world. What do you think about job search times and job search frames at this point? The uncertainty in the economy, however you want to think about it. Job searches are longer, shorter. Where are they today?
I read something the other day that said that they had really gone from 3 months to 6 months. And I unfortunately can't quote where I read that. For my clients that have jobs, I always say if you're happy and you know it, you should be thinking about what's next 12 to 18 months out. So if you don't have a job, then you need to plan on investing 3 to 6 months into your search, and you need to go hard and heavy on leveraging your network. And if you do have a job, especially if you're happy, you need to take the time to invest in building those relationships, figuring out what you need to do from a professional development standpoint so that as you go through the 4 phases of a job, you get to that final phase of positioning, you're ready to go. So it is really about thinking 12 to 18 months out about what's next.
So one of the most talented individuals I ever managed reached out to me on a text recently and said, I'm going to begin my job search. And I responded back and I said, I know this person and that person, they're got big deal jobs and you'd be great in their teams or in their organizations. And her response reminded me of why she was so talented, because she said, I'm taking some time to think about what I'm really going to do. And it reminded me, she's not really just looking for the next job or something. She's directing the significance of her career. Now, probably able to do that for a number of reasons, in addition to her native talent and skill set.
She's smart. We unfortunately stay too long sometimes. There's something that holds us back, whether it's the fear of moving forward, whether it's money, the golden handcuffs. How many times as an executive said, I don't want to give up my vacation? You're not going to have to. If they really want you, they're going to work it out. I was working with a woman a few months ago, and she got a CEO offer, and it was not the salary that she wanted. And so she was just going to turn them down. And when you're the right candidate, you're the right candidate. They're going to figure it out. But this woman that you're talking about is really smart to step back and say, I know that within the next whatever time frame she's given that I'm going to look, but instead of running from something, I'm going to take my time and make sure that I'm running to something. And that's why careers ebb and flow, is because too often we run from a job instead of to a job.
Yeah, I can't wait till she asks for a recommendation. I mean, I'm so looking forward to, it'll even be more stellar than what I thought of her originally.
And want to be fascinating to see what she kind of picks as her next move.
Yeah. And it's also interesting, when you're on the talent acquisition side, and particularly as a hiring manager, to watch people that you've hired grow in their careers, they become a VP of this, an SVP of that, CEO of that thing or another. How do you help people think about the long-term significance of career as opposed to, oh my goodness, I need to find a job?
For me, it's about do something that you love. We lose our balance and forget to set boundaries and get caught up in what the world is expecting of us. And leadership should be about the legacy that you leave behind and the people that you have promoted. When we look at what's important, we think a lot about advocating for ourselves when it comes to next, but the more people that you can advocate for, just like this woman that you're so excited to give a reference for, when we can advocate for others, we are advocating for ourselves in the long run. And helping people get to next, supporting your village really makes you a notable leader in any situation. And so finding your happiness and putting some boundaries in place so that you can have a full and balanced life is a trick that not a lot at the top have learned.
Now, in addition, I think you're a certified coach by the ICF. Is that right? Or
Yes.
so, how does that figure into your practice?
So it all starts with coaching. It starts with coaching and helping people determine why things aren't working out, what's working out, what do they need to build on from a skill set, and what do they want out of our relationship. Sometimes they don't want to change jobs. So it's just executive coaching, but a lot of times just because of my background, because I've got that TA side, they come to me because they want to figure it out. And then once they figure it out, then I bring in the rest of the support team to help them get ready and stay ready.
And if people want to get in touch with you, Susan Collins, I assume that one of the best places to start is at thenetworkconcierge.com, which will be in the show notes, and we'll have all of that great detail about thenetworkconcierge.com. But how do people get in touch with you and your team?
So the networkconcierge.com is a great place to start. You can sign up for my weekly newsletter there. You can also follow the Network Concierge on LinkedIn. I've got my company page set up there, and I post a lot about careers, career growth, and a lot about just our self-confidence and finding that time to move forward.
And the weekly newsletter, did you say it's a weekly newsletter? What kind of content does that cover?
It is a little bit of everything. It's forward career momentum. It's a lot about confidence and the 8 career narratives. I talk a lot about that, building boundaries, relationships, networking, all of the pieces that you need to build a career that's just above and beyond doing the job.
No, you make you've got a lot of great reasons. 100 Reasons blog, growth in action for career satisfaction, and I love one of the questions that you posed in a recent blog post, which is who has influence over your career. How would you help people understand that? What's the teaser for reading that blog post? Who has influence over your career?
First of all, you have influence over your career. And we forget that sometimes. How we show up, our personal brand is really important. But then it goes back to those relationships that we build and putting the time and energy into those. We forget that it's a big picture view. And so you need to step above and kind of stand in the clouds and look down and think about what do you want out of your career, and then work your career yourself. Take accountability for your career. Take action to move towards the things that you want. And it's hard because you got to push back that fear. And I get it, right? Like I left corporate America. I left my corporate salary behind. It was not an easy thing for me. I started with a simple number in my planner that was 365. And I said that I was going to give myself a year to get my plan in place. I think I left with about 100 days left, something like that. But we have to take action to move forward, and we own our careers, and we need to rely on those around us to support us.
So many great ways to think about careers. My dear friend Bev Kay, a long time ago, talked about lateral moves, vertical moves, horizontal, all kinds of ways around moving around an organization. I assume that, you have would I be correct in assuming that most of the clients who are seeking your services are looking for upward vertical growth, or how does that factor in?
A lot of times when I start with my clients, they are thinking upward and onward. That's definitely the way they're going. I had a client last year who thought she wanted to be a VP. She was a director. She came to me, and after we had been through several coaching sessions, she came back and said that's not what she wanted. She wanted a role that that had significant influence within an organization, but she didn't feel like she needed to be a VP, that she'd really done some soul searching and based off of what she'd learned about herself during our coaching, that she wanted to be in a high-level communications position where she had, a lot of conversations with executives, but it's not always about onward and upward. I believe that a lateral move, especially at the director level, is one of the most important things you can do, because as you grow, it may not give you more money or a better title, but it will give you perspective. And then as you reach that VP, SVP level, you can talk about what you learned, and it gives you more perspective and a bigger business picture view of the landscape when you get there. Kind of knocks your competitors who have taken that straight up approach out, because you can bring something different to the table that they can't bring to the table.
How do you think the COVID-19 global pandemic affected like job search and how people think about careers?
I think it put people back in touch with their families. I mean, we worked from home for 2 years, right? Like it was one of those things where we saw people care about people again. We saw people give other people grace. I know that when I was in corporate America, I was one of the OG work from home. I worked from home when we were still using not Zoom, but everything was on a phone, and there was a pod in the middle of the office. And so we relaxed a little bit. We saw all the funny memes with the kids running behind the screen and all of those pieces, but it also gave us a different perspective. And now employees are starting to ask for a little more flexibility than they've ever had. And organizations that are demanding that people come back to the office 3 and 4 days a week are getting pushback. And so there are going to be people that want to be in the office and people that don't want to be in the office. And it's going to be a big test in flexibility for everyone.
Well, this takes us right back to where we began, which is all about getting ready and staying ready for your career, isn't it?
Yes.
Who knows what will happen? And it's so great that people can be in touch with you at the through the Network Concierge. They'll be able to get in touch with you there. Susan Collins, if you were giving advice, 1 or 2 pieces of advice to people who are thinking about their careers, what would those pieces of advice or guidance be in addition to getting ready and staying ready?
If you think about it, dig into it. If there's that one thing that keeps crossing your mind, whether it's a different title or a different position or a different company, don't let it be that fleeting moment that runs across your brain for the next 2 years. Take the time now to invest. Don't regret something down the road. I should have looked at this job. I should have looked at that job. Take some time to maybe even set up an interview, set up a networking lunch, whatever the case may be. Just because you interview with someone else doesn't mean that you're not loyal to your organization. It doesn't mean that you have to leave. It's just something that you need to explore. So take the time to explore the things that keep coming back into your head, and give yourself that opportunity to see if it's worth it. You may interview with another organization, realize that you're in a really great place. But if you don't do the interview, you'll never know if you're in a really great place.
Oh, that's great, Susan Collins. Thank you so much. And Susan really is the leadership builder, a corporate informed talent strategist, a person who really delivers coaching to rise with intention through corporate structures and helps people to work on their goals and empower network and unshakable confidence. Susan, it's just been a delight to have you as a guest today on Authentic Change with Mike Horn. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. Such an honor.
And until the next episode of Authentic Change with Mike Horn, stay well.
Thank you for listening to the Authentic Change podcast. I'm delighted that you've tuned in to listen. Please visit the show notes for links to topics discussed in today's podcast. To download a free ebook on authentic change and leadership and to subscribe to my newsletter, please visit mike-horn.com. Once again, mike-horne.com, mike-horn.com. Once again, thank you for listening to the Authentic Change podcast.